Hopefully you've now seen how Flutter is beautiful, fast, productive, and open. You've seen how designers and developers can collaborate to build native mobile apps. You've seen how the ecosystem extends Flutter with plugins from companies like Square. And you've seen tools like 2Dimensions Flare and Nevercode that amplify the power of Flutter. But we're not quite done. Flutter was not conceived as an SDK for iOS and Android. Our vision for Flutter is to be a portable UI toolkit that can go wherever you need to paint pixels. The Flutter engine is inherently cross-platform, and it can be embedded in all kinds of hardware. Just last week, we shared an example of porting Flutter to run on Raspberry Pi, running directly on the Broadcom hardware rather than using an intermediary layer like Linux or X11. We believe Flutter is a useful building block for these kinds of embedded scenarios. And perhaps in the future, we'll see Flutter powering things like automotive displays or other IoT kinds of devices. Another very practical example of how we are already going beyond mobile is Flutter desktop embedding. This is an open source project that enables Flutter apps to run on Mac, Linux, and Windows. We've been working on Flutter desktop embedding in the open for a few months now, and we're pretty happy with how it's coming on together. This lets you do things like take your basic starter application that you get when you create a Flutter project and run it on a Mac. So like here's the usual app here, and you can imagine you can plus and see how the number increments. And in fact, when we were putting this presentation together, we were thinking, how could we make our slides as beautiful as possible? So we built the entire presentation in Flutter. Everything you've seen so far has been run on the Mac implementation of Flutter. The app has been built by a company called Very Good Ventures, who are a New York-based mobile studio who exclusively focus on developing beautiful Flutter experiences. We plan to open source this software soon. But that's not all. There's one other place we'd like to go with Flutter that really demonstrates the groundbreaking potential of this technology. And before I get there, I have to take a moment to talk about Dart. Because as well as being a really well-designed language, it's a versatile platform for Flutter. Dart doesn't just compile to native ARM code, but also compiles to tight, production-ready JavaScript code. So, I want to give you an early glimpse of something we're working on in the labs. To be clear, this is a technology preview. We're not shipping any code today. We're calling this Hummingbird. And it's a port of Flutter that runs on the modern standards-based web. I'm going to show you a little demo of Hummingbird now. Here's a simple mobile app that we've been running on an Android tablet. It's an implementation of the 15-tile sliding puzzle that I suspect we all know pretty well. I can move tiles around and I can autoplay it. We've done the usual Flutter things. We've added a little bit of styling to it to make it look beautiful and so on and so forth. But I'm going to open Chrome and browse to this page. And everything you're seeing here is Flutter running on a desktop web browser. Everything you're seeing here is standards-based content, HTML, DOM, Canvas, JavaScript. There's no black box here any more than any other web content. Importantly, it's the same Flutter code running in this browser as on the phone. We haven't had to change the code to get it to run here. We've still got some optimization work to do, but you can see that we're getting 60 frames per second for this scenario across the current generation of devices. And because this is the web, I can even turn it into a PWA if I want to, thanks to the great work from the Chrome team. So that's Hummingbird. What do you think? Again, this is early days for this experimental product. Our Hummingbird, you might say, is still learning to fly. In the meantime, we're publishing right now a blog article that describes more of the technical details behind Hummingbird. And we'll have a lot more to share at next year's Google I/O conference. So, portable, high-quality UI has been the holy grail for front-end developers for decades. And over the course of the last hour or so, I hope you've seen why we think Flutter has the potential to transform how all manner of UIs are built. This is not just about iOS and Android. This is about building beautiful user experiences on any platform. We're excited about our mission, and we hope you are too. So to close, I want to introduce you to someone who's played a pivotal role in the Flutter project. Eric Seidel is one of the co-founders of the Flutter project, and he's going to end this presentation with a few final thoughts. Eric, thank you so much.
Thank you, Tim. A couple of my colleagues and I started this project at Google over 4 years ago. We just wanted to make development better. We wanted to make user experiences better. And these are themes that many of us had worked on for years as part of the Chrome project. But we felt that within the constraints of the web, we couldn't get there fast enough. So we started experiments to see if we could make something radically better for both users and all the teams that develop for them. Those experiments became Flutter. So how we got here was a bit interesting. It took a little while. But we felt a radical approach was required. If we were going to break from existing systems and build a whole new way to develop, we knew that was going to take a long time. But we saw this as an important long-term investment, not just for my team, but also for Google. So as we were starting, we talked to lots of developers. We sat down and made many, many lists of problems that we heard and wanted to solve. I think it's worth looking back at least the 4 big areas that we set out to solve. And you've heard some about these today. So the first was that we wanted to make it easy to build beautiful things. And because, again, this was a long-term bet, Flutter had to make it easy not just to make the most beautiful things available today, but also had to be flexible enough and powerful enough to build the most beautiful things being designed for tomorrow. The second was that we wanted to make it easy to produce consistent, reliable performance. We saw developers struggle with this consistently on other platforms, and we wanted to make it easy to deliver a really smooth experience at 60 frames a second, 120 frames a second, 240 frames a second, whatever the underlying device could do. Third, we really wanted to improve the developer experience. Developer productivity has, again, if we're making a long-term bet, developer productivity had to be at least as good as the best available that day. And so far, honestly, we've far exceeded my expectations with now sub-second stateful hot reload. And fourth, we needed to build a thing that could go wherever Google needed it to go. It had to be open, it had to be extensible, it had to be flexible to go to all the places and all the devices. Run on all the hardware, the software, all the crazy things that Google was building then and is building now. We spent many, many months working with a few brave early customers. And many times in response to customer needs, we rewrote large swaths of the system. But we always kept our eyes on these long-term goals. In the end, it was a lot of effort, still is a lot of effort, but I think the results speak for themselves. The many apps that we've shipped, or that we've seen shipped rather, the success stories we've heard, continue to tell me that we've focused on the right areas and are getting good results. Which brings us all to today. So this, today, our announcement of 1.0, is obviously a major milestone for the project and for the community and for the many teams who have worked for years to get us here. You saw today how Flutter is already enabling developers all over the world to deliver beautiful apps to hundreds of millions of people throughout the globe. But this is also just the beginning. Flutter is Google's portable UI toolkit. It is highly portable and already works on many form factors beyond phones. You saw it used today on desktops for our slides. You may have seen some of the many articles floating around the internet of people taking Flutter and running it on gigantic things or little tiny things. And you even saw today some of our experiments with running Flutter on the web. So if I look forward a few years, I see Flutter running in a ton more places. So finally, and really the whole reason why I'm up here, is to say a big thank you. I want to say personally thank you to so many for working with us for so long to get here, particularly those who tried Flutter. Some of you bet on Flutter very early on, before it even was called Flutter. I also want to say thank you for all the hundreds of suggestions and bug reports that this community receives every month from those listening. And finally, of course, thank you to those tuning in, whether via one of our, I think it's over 150 now, viewing parties around the globe, via Twitter, via the live stream, and of course, to all of you here in person. So thank you for taking time out of your day to celebrate with us. And fittingly, we're going to close today's presentation, not with us, but with you. Flutter has always been, and always will be, a community effort, built together in the open. No one company or one team can reach all of the places we want Flutter to go. So we close with our hats off to that community. The stories like we're about to show you give us the motivation to continue each day in this mission. Thank you.